Hey guys, this is Aryan Karani from Kid with Camera, and we're just going to speedrun a bunch of APCS review. Let's start with constructors. How do you construct a class? Public class, and then the name of the class. So name of class. In this case, I have APCS review as my file name, so that's what I'm going to put. Next, the main method. Public static main void main string args with your curly braces. There's your main method. How do you create an actual method? First, you're going to do visibility, and then you're going to do static / non-static, and then you're going to do return type, and then you're going to put name of method, your parentheses with any parameters you want, and then curly braces and whatever the method does, right? So here's an example. Private static void, well, let's put int, make int with int x parameter and curly braces, and it's getting an error because I have to return the type int, so I'm just going to return 0 so that the error goes away. Remember to put your return value or return whatever you're doing if you have a return method. Next, let's do some object constructing. So obviously you know how to make your ints. Int x equals 0, string stir equals hello world. That's how you make a string and a string and an int. You can also make doubles, double x double y equals 0.0, have long 1 equals 14. You can have float 1 equals 0. There you go, there's your floats. So those are all your really important primitive types. So next, let's go to some objects. Let's start with the ArrayList. That's really important one. So you're going to put ArrayList inside angle brackets. You're going to put a value that the ArrayList will store. ArrayList string, let's say strs equals new ArrayList. You're going to put your brackets. You're going to put your parentheses. Constructed one. Actually, first let's go over the methods you can do on ArrayList. So first you can do strs.toString, right? That'll print out the ArrayList. You can do strs.add, which will add something. So strs.add hello, because I have a string array. Strs.add oh no. Remember, when you're making an ArrayList, if you're making it out of something like an integer or something, make sure you're putting the object in there, so an integer or a double, not ArrayList of int. Just keep that in mind. So we can add things in there. Strs.remove. We can say remove at index 2 or 1, because we don't have the index 2 at the moment. And we can do again println strs.toString. We can access each separate value with strs.get, and you can get index 1 or index 0, because we don't have an index 1 anymore. So you can also do strs.add hello 2, strs.add hello 3, and strs.add hello 4. So you can also, when you're removing something, you can return value of the remove function is the thing that you removed. So if you do println strs.remove, you can do remove at index 2. It'll also print what you removed out. You can also do strs.set at index 3 element hello prank, anything. That's how you set it. You can also do strs.add at a certain index. So strs.add at 3 the element hello, and what that'll do is insert it at that index. So the hello with the capital H is now at that index 3, and it'll move all the other elements to the right. And again, you can just do print out strs.toString. Let's run the program real quick. It'll show us. Nope. Okay. So there you go. That's how the toString method works. Okay, now let's look at arrays. So arrays, you have your type that is storing, your square brackets, name of the array, and again new, the same thing, type square brackets, and allocate some memory, so size 10. You can also, you know, have a string array or a double array, right? So if you have an int array and we want to initialize it with default values, you can do new int your square empty square brackets and add just, you know, 1 2 3 4 5 6 some default values. So that's how you initialize it with some default values. How do you print out these? You probably want to do a for loop, so you can do a for each for int x in R2. I've already made an int x, that's why it doesn't like that. Int I in R2, print ln I, and that's going to print out all zeros, because when you do allocate memory with the empty array like that, for an integer specifically, it's just going to fill it with zeros. If you want to do it again for int I in R3, println I, you run that. There we go. There's your R1 and there's your R2 and R3. Now let's go to two-dimensional arrays. So you do your type, you put 2 square brackets, new, and again 2 square brackets. Now you have to allocate memory in the first bracket at least. So I'm gonna put an allocate memory of 10. If you don't allocate memory in this second one, it's called a jagged array or an uneven array or something like that. Basically, those arrays within the arrays can be different lengths, it doesn't matter, or you can allocate it by those have to be arrays of length 5. So we have a 10 by 5 array, or you can have a 10 and then that, and then that would be a jagged array, because now I can, in that jagged array, I can say jagged array 0 equals new int of 1 2 3, and jagged array 1 equals new int 1 2 3 4, and it won't complain. But if I do 2D array 0 equals new int of a 6, it won't like that, and you'll see it probably get an error or not. And now to print out these 2D arrays, what you can do is more for each loops. So for int I, or you want to do first an array I R51, because I don't know what I've done, in jagged array. So that'll get each array, each row basically. And then you want to do another for int I in R51, because what would have been better is int row column in row, and then you can just print ln those values. You can print out column. That's how you access each value. You can also use for normal for loop, where you do for int I equals 0, I is less than 2D array dot length I plus plus, for int j equals 0, j is less than 2D array I, because you want to get that specific row dot length. Remember, when you're doing length of an array, you don't put the parentheses, because it's not a method, it's a property. J plus plus, A big mistake I see, especially in these for loops, is that people put I here or something and it totally messes up the code. So make sure you're putting J there, or whatever you assign in that for loop line. And you can println 2D array I J. Now be careful if you're doing something like a string array and you're trying to print these out. If you don't initialize it or pre-initialize it, all this objects will actually be null, so everything that it assigns will be null, so you won't really get a good output. So let's quickly run this. And okay, so the reason this doesn't work is because that object is now right now initialized as null, so it doesn't like that. So I'm just going to take that out, and we're just going to get a bunch of zeros, which will partly be this 2D array dot length. Do a println 2D array. There we go. So everything after this is all your 2D arrays, which is just filled with zeros. But if you try to access with a for each loop a null, it won't work, because it's null basically means nothing in there. One of the things that people try to use but they forget to import or even create an object for is random. Your random object, mine automatically imports it up here. That's what VS Code does, but this is how you make a random object. Random int random gen equals new random. It's a very normal pattern for this. Type name equals new, and then the constructor. And you can do int rand equals gen.nextInt with a bound of maybe 10, so that'll give you an int from 0 to 9. If you do want something like from 5 to 11, you can do rand equals gen.nextInt. So 5 to 11, 11 minus 5, that's 6, so you want a bound of 6, and then you can get up to 5. So 11 minus 5 is 6, so you want to actually have a bound of 7, then add 5 to that, and that'll give you anything from 5 to 11. So you do max minus min plus 1 is your bound, and then you just add your min. So let me just write that down right here, a comment. To get a range using random object. This is only for the random object. This is very different from Math.random, which I'll go over right now. So to get it, range for using random, your bound is max minus min plus 1, and add min to the result. And that's what we did here for a range of 5 to 11. There you go. Okay, next, Math.random. So I'm just going to put math here so it actually imports that. So how you use Math.random is you're going to assign it to an int or a double, whatever you want. So I'm going to assign it to an int random equals Math.random. See, we didn't have to initialize anything, any object. We just go straight to Math.random. Math.random. We have Math.random, and you're going to put, you don't put a bound in this. What Math.random does is generates number from 0.0 to any number, any double less than 1. And if we hover over this, double greater than or equal to 0.0 and less than 1.0. So it's 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, all the way up to 1.0, right? So if you want a range out of this, so you would do, if you wanted a range of 0 to 5, you would do Math.random times 5, and you would add 1 to it. Why would you add 1? It's because you have Math.random from 0.0 to 0.9, let's say. Now in Java, 0.9 times 4 equals 4.5. But if you cast this to an int, that goes to 4, right? As an int. And so you want to add 1 to it so that you can get that 1 to 5. Add 1 to it, so 4 plus 1 is 5, to get that 1 to 5 range. Now if you wanted 0 to 5, instead of doing this math.random times 5 plus 1, just do math.random times 6, and that'll get you 0 to 5. And of course, whenever you're doing this and you want an integer out of it, remember to cast it to an integer, because that's what random wants. It wants an integer. So this will give you that 0 to 5 range, 0 to 5. And if you want, say 5 to 11, you can say random equals int random. So if you want 5 to 11, again 11 minus 1 is 6, 11 minus 5 is 6, add 1 you get 7, so times 7, so that gives you the 0 to 6, and then you add 5, and that will give you 5 to 11, because this will generate as an int 0 to 6, and then 0 plus 5 is 5, 6 plus 5 is 11. That will give you any integer from 5 to 11. Great, so we went over math.random. Okay, next let's go over scanners. I don't know if scanners are actually on the AP test. I've had varying things about this. I've heard they're not. There might be, but let's go over scanners real quick. So scanner is probably only going to be used to get user input. So scanner is an object which you have to import, right? So you're going to do scanner, and then the name of the scanner, I'm going to put scan equals new scanner. And now you can put a few things in here. You can put a string. Either put the name of the string or an actual string, literal. Or you can have system.in to get your command line input. Or it's not going to be in the APCSS, but file also. You can put a file f there. But let's just go over system.in. How to use a scanner. So you can say int scan result equals scan.nextInt. Next is going to get you that next scan, and actually scans will always scan it as a string. So scan.next will get the string. So let's run this real quick. Got all these, but then we have it stopped here because of our scanner. So I'm gonna put a little up, and it would be great if you could see that actually works. So I'm gonna put print enter string, and after scan.next println scan result. So enter string, I'm gonna enter and that's what it picked up. Now scanners always use a delimiter, so that delimiter is a space. So you'll notice if I run this again and I put this space this, it'll only get that first token, and that token is what it's going to be picking up with the delimiter of a space. And it does not include that space when it's picking up that string. If you wanted that whole line, you would use scanner.nextLine, which would get the whole line of whatever you input. So it would get that whole line. If you wanted an integer, now you have to be very careful when you're getting integers, because when you do scan.nextInt, it's going to be looking for an int, and if you don't enter one, it's going to be a big problem. So if I enter G, error, input mismatch exception. So make sure you put an int, but you can put 45. It's going to pick up a 45 integer, and you can see I can do scan result plus 10, and it'll work because it's picking up an integer. Just make sure that's what the person is entering, and you can do the same with next double or next long, anything. Change this back to a string. And you can see my GitHub has these scanner files. You can look at those if you want to know more about scanners. And the same with arrays. I'll have those arrays uploaded, and recursion is also there, so you can look at that. Next, what do you do when the AP test tells you to make an object? And I think it's a very likely that it's going to ask you to make an object. So this is the way you make an object. So you do your normal public class name of object, right? And then most likely you're going to put an object constructor, or say object constructor. So you're going to put public and then the name of the object. Any parameters they want you to put in there, int x and y. There's your constructor. Of course, you will probably have your instance variables, which is your integers that the object is storing, in x and y. It's a great place to look at the this keyword, where this dot x is always referencing what's this object. It's referencing myself to the object. So this dot x means this x up here equals x. Without the this keyword, it's just going to default to this parameter up here. So do not do x equals x if your parameter and your instance variables have the same name. It's not going to work. Use this dot y equals y. So there's instantiating an object. You're probably going to have some methods. So most likely you're going to have, you know, public int get x, return x. You don't have to do with this keyword because we don't have a parameter with the same name. But if, and then you're gonna have a public int get y, return y. Most likely these are also going to be private or protected, and you'll see why we need that protected in a moment. But private or protected. So what private does is that means only this object can access that variable, and protected means that this object and everything that it inherits also can reference that variable. Okay, so then you're going to be, you know, changing things in methods. So public void change y, especially if you have your private and protected variables, you know, you're going to be having these modifier methods. So this, or not this, you're probably going to put, you know, int y or new y as a parameter, and you would just do y equals new y. That's simple. I'm also going to make this protected so that anything that inherits from this can see it. Let's go over inheritance. So I'm going to put inheritance object. I know I spelled that wrong, don't worry about it. So you're going to have another public class. I haven't put .java as the extension. 1 second. Public class inheritance. How did I spell this? Inheritance object. Why is that not working? Okay, yeah. Extends is how you say this is going to inherit from something object. That's what I'm going to do. Actually, I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to rename this from object to first object, because it'll probably create some problems later on. Oh my, what is going on? We name that first object. We go back to inheritance object. We extend, not object, first object, because I want to extend that. What is it now? Okay. It doesn't like that we don't have a constructor for this object, so we're going to make one real quick. Public inherit, however I spell that, I'm just going to use autocomplete. Of course, if you're extending, you're probably going to have the same parameters, int x, int y. Here. And you can do super. So super actually references the parent of this object, x, y. Now, why don't I need to put, you know, int x, int y up here in x? Because I put a protected up here, and that means this object and everything that inherits from it can also access those objects. So this is inheritance. And I can also access this get x, this get y, and this change y method. So I can actually, that's all I need if I want to just, I mean, obviously you would probably change some things about the object and blah, 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 but that's generally what you have. Now I'm just going to add a random, add a change x, because we don't have that in the other one. What's wrong now? Oh, public void. I didn't forget that. Public void change x, x equals new x. There's our method. We're gonna go back to APCS review, and I'm gonna make a new first object. Obj equals new first object. We're gonna put our constructor 5, 2, you know, just random integers, and I'm gonna do obj.change y equals 2. probably not the best, change y 5. And what that's going to do is just going to print out n y, print that out, plus obj.getY. And that's going to print out our y. Now I'm going to make another inheritance object apparently. Inheritance object obj2 equals new first object. New, not first object, inheritance object. Oh my gosh, sorry about this. Inheritance object with constructor. Put a 4.2 in there. So there's our constructor. And now I can call obj2.change x, right? Because that's part of my inheritance object class that change x we created. Change x to 3. We can do the same thing. We can print that out. But our first object cannot use that change x method because it's not in here, and it's not inheriting from anything that has that change x, so it can't use it. I'm gonna show you something called polymorphism, which is a little confusing, but I hope you'll get it. Of course, this is a review, so you should probably know all this already. We can actually make a first object r equals new inheritance object, because inheritance object inherits from first object. We can create a first object with the type. We can create an inheritance object with the type first object. We can put our constructor 2, 3, whatever. And now this new r, I don't know why I called it r, it cannot use that change x method we created in inheritance object. Like, why? Why can it not? Because it's right there. But because it's a type of first object, it only accesses these methods. But you can use that change y. So you can use, change y to 500. Why not? Now, say you have a different change y method in here. Public void change y into new y. It's the exact same as the other one. And I put just print on y, right? I'm not actually assigning anything. And I have this first object r. If I called it on this inheritance object, because it's type inheritance object, if I changed the y, it would actually call now it on the change y in here. And it would also call this change y on the one in here, right? So you can do that. Y5, it'll call the change y in here. It'll call the change y in here. So that's overriding the method. And the only methods that inheritance object can, this kind of inheritance object where the type is first object, can access is when this method is overriding something from this method. Basically changing how it's implemented. And that is it. I think that's all you need to know for your APCS test tomorrow. If you want to know about other stuff such as recursion, check out my recursion video. If you want to know stuff about objects, check out that objects video. If you want to know more stuff about Boolean expressions, compound Boolean expressions, are very difficult problems, at least for me on the AP test, go check out that video. Good luck tomorrow. I know you'll absolutely bomb this test. This is Aryan Karani from Kid with the Camera. See you tomorrow.